So a few examples of some staples in our kitchen are bulgur wheat, I think would be number one. And there's what's so cool about bulgur is it's a really quick cooking grain. And whether it depends what size it is too, it's ground in different sizes. They make bulgur really coarse for pilaf, and that's sort of, it looks like grape nuts almost. It's like, it's super coarse so that when you cook it like rice almost. It absorbs flavors from vegetables or aromatic broths. And then they grind the bulgur in different ways. So there's really coarse, there's one in between, and then there's really fine that is ground like almost like not flour, but more like a coarse semolina or something would be. And it's really used like flour. It's used instead of white flour, basically to thicken or to bind something, which is, it sounds at first, using whole grains instead of flour, like it might make something heavy, but in fact, bulgur is super light and feathery, and its process, its technique to work with, it's always needed to make something called kibi or kufta, and it's very light and it has tons of flavor because it hasn't been bleached or over refined. So you're really tasting the grain when you eat something. And I mean, a good example of, so the coarse stuff would be used for pilafs, and then the fine bulgur would be used to make kibi or kufta. And kibi or kufta essentially is something that's, if it's made with vegetables, it's like a dumpling, and it could be baked or fried or boiled or eaten raw. And if it's made with meat, it's more like a meatball. So you can, and again, that could be baked, boiled, fried, eaten raw as well. So there's many different preparations of kibi. And I actually, we make right now a really flat kibi. So this is like, this is the bulgur that's kneaded with onions and aromatics like red pepper paste and spices. And then we mix in potato, equal part potato to the bulgur. And we get this sort of dough that we can fill. And then it's very flat, obviously, but you can see in the cross section that it's filled with mushrooms and walnuts, but the outside is an actual dough made with really fine bulgur wheat and potato. So it's another way of binding something like white flour is, but it's a lot more flavorful, and it has obviously a lot more nutrition to it. Another grain that I came across in traveling was in Sicily. They grow a lot of durum wheat, and they have the whole semolina berries, or the whole durum wheat that they call grano. And that looks sort of, grano is bigger and rounder and much more sort of plump. And it takes about an hour to cook. But what's so great about it is you can cook a big batch of it. It might tenderize in about an hour and a half, but then you can freeze it so that it's always, you can just pull whatever you need out and sprinkle it into a salad, sprinkle it into a soup, or you could even make a hot breakfast cereal with it. And in Sicily, when I first had it, they layered it between yogurt and what we call spoon sweets, or sort of homemade jam. And this is like a mint syrup, yogurt, grano, jam, yogurt, grano, jam kind of thing. So you can eat it like a parfait, basically. And for breakfast in Sicily, you would see yogurt and grano sold together. So it's almost like having a breakfast cereal mixed into your, a whole grain mixed into your yogurt. They also, one of my favorite all-time writers and experts on Mediterranean cuisine, Paula Wolfert, has a recipe for vanilla ice cream sprinkled with grano and drizzled with a natural grape molasses, which is a really fabulous idea. And those are two really significant, important whole grain staples in our kitchen that we use in lots of different ways. The fine bulgur is always used to make kibbeh. The coarse bulgur is always used to make pilaf. And the term pilaf refers to the fact that the grain, whether it's rice or coarse bulgur, is cooked in the aromatics rather than like boiled in lots of water and then drained. It absorbs just enough liquid to be cooked, and it retains the liquid and the flavors. Like if you're using onions or carrots or spices or anything, or even like a rich chicken broth or shellfish broth, it retains that liquid as well as its own starches and things. So it actually has pilafs usually have a lot more flavor than just steamed rice or steamed wheats or boiled wheats or whatever. And then, so yeah, coarse bulgur for pilafs, fine bulgur for kibbeh. And then the grano for soups, salads, yogurts, ice cream, and it freezes really well. And then lastly, my personal favorite, just as far as like deliciousness goes, is farro piccolino, which is just a small, like a short, plump little farro that cooks a little bit quicker than the longer traditional Italian farro. And it definitely, this is from Anson Mills, which is another really fabulous farm that's growing whole grains and corns and things that are fresh ground, and a really cool resource for all of these things. But their farro piccolino is delicious boiled. It takes about half the time to cook than the grano does. And then I love toasting it or frying it a little bit afterwards in oil, and then mixing them with dark leafy greens like kale or Swiss chard, and even some beans or black-eyed peas or something. It makes a really delicious grain and green side dish. Has tons of flavor, packs, I think, twice as much punch as the grano and the bulgur does, but they're all very rich in their sort of natural flavors. So a lot more complex than just something that's been stripped of everything and refined. The nutrition part of it to me is more about the wholeness and the purity of the ingredient itself. And that's just, the perspective I have as being a chef. That's sort of what draws me first to the whole grains, is their flavor, because that's what I'm always, I'm a flavor seeker. I'm always trying to look for different ways of making something richer. The challenge for me has always been, can I make something absolutely delicious with very pure, clean ingredients, and have it be rich enough but not heavy? And whole grains definitely have that element where they do make something a little richer, because they do have a nutty quality to them, and they also bring a lot of texture to something as well. So they're versatile, and there's many different kinds. And to be honest, there are probably a couple kinds that I'm not super familiar with, or even that crazy about, that haven't become like staples in my kitchen. But I think that's the fun discovery part about cooking and eating, is that you're finding things that you really can cook easily, enjoy, and have it be something that's very healthful.